Listen up, warriors. Our scouts just returned with a tale worth hearing. Today's title: Return of the Calamity-Class Knight. Our tale begins as humans are being chased by an army of monsters. As two warriors are dueling, one of them, the Empire's strongest sword, Use, finally collapses and mutters that this was expected since his opponent is the Knight of Hell, Death Knight after all. However, the helmet of the Death Knight suddenly breaks, and he winces in pain. A skeletal man declares that this is absolutely delightful, since he's finally brought down the cursed empire with his own hands. He mutters that they say revenge is sweeter the longer you wait for it. And he's waited 1,000 years to see this through. So he questions if someone can even begin to imagine how immense his joy is right now. His name is revealed to be Archlich Dorgo. The Emperor of the Helios Empire, Howard Otto Light, hysterically asks how he dared to slaughter his people and shouts that he belongs in hell. Dorgo cheerily says he's become the first in history to unify this content, so it's only right that he be called the Emperor. He tells his demon lords and his death knights that they've done well and orders them to bring him the imperial crown now. As the knight brings him the crown, Dorgo asks how he should reward him merit. However, the Death Knight suddenly destroys the crown and stabs Dorgo, shocking him. The demon lords quickly shield Dorgo as the knight sees that he can finally move by him will. Dorgo questions how he's speaking, since he removed his entire conscience, so he says it only looked that way since he was never fully gone, and when he was trapped in his body, he saw everything. The demon lords rush forward to attack the knight, but he swiftly takes them down in a single strike. Dorgo resurrects skeletons to attack him, but he orders them to fall into despair, and they're all suddenly destroyed. Alarmed, Dorgo remarks that this can't be true, since he's created a monster that rivals the power of a god. Dorgo understands that he's angry but remarks that even if this body is destroyed, he can just transfer his soul to a backup vessel and regain control again. The knight says he's thought of 100 ways to kill him, and he created a sword art that cuts not just the body but the soul as well. He rushes forward and swiftly slashes through Dorgo. For a second, Dorgo laughs and says he knew that wouldn't work, but his body is suddenly destroyed and he explodes. The knight tells him to go to hell and crushes his skull. He wearily collapses and says there's only one more thing he needs to do. He decides to do the last thing to apologize to the people he killed. He suddenly stabs himself and starts hearing his sister's voice, believing he's on his way to hell. However, the man, Damien, suddenly wakes up to see his sister in front of him and realizes he's in the past. He wonders if this is a dream, since he destroyed this mansion with his very own hands. Damien mutters that there's only one way to find out. He picks up a small branch and swiftly destroys a huge rock with it. Seeing this, Damien starts manically laughing as it starts raining. He warily realizes he's returned to the past. Damien remarks that he had a talent for staining the family's honor, and for trampling on their future. He even possessed a talent for squandering the family's fortune, and in the end, thanks to those talents, his father angrily ordered him to leave the house. However, Damien's sister asked Damien to take some money with him, even though her life was ruined because of him. Damien snatched the pouch from her hands and hurriedly ran away. On the day he fled the family as if he were escaping, he came to understand for the first time what guilt and shame were. Presently, he wonders why he's returned to the past and questions if this is some sort of divine miracle. He sees that his body struggles even when using a skill of this level, and remarks that shattering wave that amplified the shock delivered through a strike sevenfold. It was called the Castle Wall Destroyer, the technique he acquired by killing a knight. A servant from Damien's household warily approaches him, so Damien remembers that he's Victor. Victor asks why he's still out here since Lady Laos told him to come inside. Damien asks if he's done something, so Victor questions if he really doesn't know. When Damien enters the mansion, he hurriedly dodges a sword strike from his father, who questions if he's lost his mind, since he got kicked out of a tavern for brawling. His wife and daughter try to hurriedly stop him, as Damien realizes this is the time he's returned to. He wonders how long it's been since he got scolded like this, and admits he's missed this scene. His family shockingly sees that he's crying and his father. Paul asks what excuse he has this time. Damien admits he has none cause due to his actions, he has stained the honor of the Haksen house. It's his fault and there isn't any room for excuses. Paul asks if he thinks he'll let it slide, but Damien says he will resolve this, surprising him. As Damien is leaving, he says once he's solved this, he'll accept the proper punishment, confusing his family. In the commercial city of Landward, Damien reaches the tavern with Victor, who asks if he's really going inside, since there are rumors that the place is blocked by a criminal organization. Damien tells him to go back if he's scared, and says he shouldn't worry too much, since he's just going to politely apologize to the owner and leave so nothing could possibly happen. As he's walking, Damien remarks that he won't repeat the same mistakes again, and will correct his actions one by one, starting from here. The guards annoyingly ask Damien why he came here again. Damien says he came to apologize to the owner for what he did, hearing which the guards start chuckling. They call his family trashy, and one of them agrees to accept his apology if he introduces him to Damien's sister. Damien mutters that this is hard, since he really thought he could just apologize and leave, but it seems he greatly overestimated himself. He suddenly cuts off the guy's hand and he starts screaming in pain as Damien says he will show them exactly what they wanted, the kind of man the scoundrel eldest son truly is seeing, which Victor alarmingly remarks that he was supposed to go solve it. The other guard hurriedly asks Damien if he knows who they are. So he says he doesn't really care to know, and suggests that they finish what they've started. The guard warns him that no one who touches them, the Black Serpent, gets away unharmed in this city. Hearing which, Damien remembers that the Black Serpent were expanding their influence in Landwalk around this time. This was one of the taverns they backed, and when he complained about their ridiculous prices, they beat him up and humiliated him in front of everyone. Upon thinking about it, Damien remarks that he's actually the one who deserves an apology and starts smiling. The guard declares that they're not going to go easy on him, just because he's a noble, and charges forward. But Damien trips him up and says killing them all wouldn't be enough, but he'll hold back for his family's sake. More men from the Black Serpent arrive after Damien stabs the guard. A man asks Damien which group he's from, but he says he just came to apologize and ended up getting one instead, even though he just has some business with the owner. The man doesn't believe him and orders his lackey tack. So Damien swiftly defeats them all in one strike, and realizes he's out of breath just from this. The guy hurriedly tries to run away, but Damien takes him down as well. Inside the tavern, Damien drops the guy, seeing which all the customers desperately run out. The owner, Ander, asks what all the commotion is for, so Damien says he handled all the guys outside and introduces himself. He says he's not here to cause any trouble, and only came to get an apology from him. Ander doesn't know what he's talking about, so Damien says the drink prices here were outrageous, and when he complained, Ander's men beat him like a dog and threw him out. Thanks to that, he ended up getting the reputation of a drunken troublemaker, and because of that incident, he and his family lost too much. Ander maliciously declares that from what he knows, there wasn't much honor left for Baron Haksen to lose. He brandishes his cane and arrogantly asks Damien if he really thought he'd apologize just because he said that. He tells him to quit his pathetic noble act and pay for disrupting his business. Damien smilingly says he was going to forgive him if he apologized nicely, but it's fine if he wants to do it this way. He jumps up to attack Ander, remarking that he'll pay dearly for his words. However, a man suddenly jumps up as well and blocks his attack, surprising him. Ander tells Ted he arrived right on time. Damien says he doesn't seem like someone who'd work in a place like this and questions why a knight is here. Knights are those who walk the path of chivalry throughout their lives. Their ranks are divided according to their levels of training. Among them, formal knights who can freely use aura can cleave mountains with a single blow, and cut city walls like paper. They're superhuman beings. Ander laughingly says Sir Ted here is the beloved apprentice knight of the Black Snake boss. So Damien is as good as dead now. Damien sees that he is an apprentice knight after all, so the faint aura he felt must have been because he's still an apprentice. Damien understands why a human like him is working here. Believing he must have lacked talent, and couldn't become a formal knight. So he was expelled from being an apprentice. Ander asks Ted how much reward he would like for dealing with Damien. So Ted mutters that they will settle up later. He jumps up and declares that he will rip this guy's mouth apart first. However, Damien swiftly dodges his attacks and remarks that even with large movements, the tip of his sword doesn't waver. Damien remarks that he's getting exhausted since this body is reaching its limit, and admits he'll have to increase his stamina when he returns. Tim tells him to dodge this next attack and uses his ultimate technique, so Damien remarks that he should respond with a technique befitting that. In a flashback, the master of the Sword of Death, Salmangui, orders Damien to cut the useless talk and scream immediately if he doesn't want to die. When Damien doesn't answer, Salmangui sees that he can't understand words and menacingly mutters that he has one more person to kill thanks to him. Since Damien wants death, Salmangui decides to let him see his secret technique, a gift for his journey to the underworld, because he can see that the body is mostly made up of water. He swiftly slashes through Damien using his secret technique, Calamity-severing sword, and declares that he can cut people as easily as water with a wooden sword like this. He tells Damien he should have gone when he told him, but Damien's body starts reforming itself, shocking Salmangui, who questions if he's an undead before getting impaled. Presently, Damien slashes through Ted's chest, remarking that it was always like this. Enemies who faced him died with expressions of disbelief. Since becoming a Death Knight, his abilities have been more formidable than he'd thought. That is, the ability to absorb all of the techniques and states of an opponent, and make them his own. As Ander is watching in shock, he hurriedly gets down on all fours and desperately apologizes for daring to tarnish the honor of the great Baron Haksen. Showing him the wealth nearby, Ander asks if Baron Haksen's wounded heart will be healed this much money, hearing which Damien remarks that although the original purpose was to receive an apology, there's no reason for him to refuse the money under these circumstances. He says it's not enough, but he'll let it slide. As Victor is standing outside, Damien asks what he's doing and orders him to come inside. Victor is collecting it. He remarks that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. He wonders where Damien learned swordsmanship like that, and as they're walking home, Ander bows them out. He frustratingly remarks that he'll get every penny back, and will immediately ask the boss, but Damien suddenly chops off one of his ears, and says punishment must still be applied. He orders Ander to go tell Black Snake that if they dare to lay hand on his family, he won't idly stand by. As Damien is walking home with Victor, he remarks that he knows well that this one time cannot wash away all his past mistakes, but in this life, given a new chance, he will no longer disappoint his family. Meanwhile, in the Lion Bloom Marquisate, a boy asks his brother if he's heard the saying that love always comes with pain. His brother asks with that serious remark, and why he's making such a serious face. So his brother menacingly says he's going to find love. The next morning, Damien yawningly says it's been a while since he spent so soundly, so Victor mutters that he's jealous, since he couldn't sleep a wink last night, and was worrying about yesterday. Damien says the original objective changed a bit, but they were handsomely rewarded, and more importantly, soon enough, he rumors will spread that someone made a mistake with the Baron's son at a tavern, and got wrecked. So once that happens, no one will take their family lightly anymore, and the image of the Baron's delinquent eldest son will change at least a little. Victor admits that's good, but he's worried about the Black Snake because of what happened to the members, and that they even hired apprentice knights. Victor sees that he's quite self-aware and asks when exactly he learnt swordsmanship, so Damien quickly says he trained here and there whenever he could. Paul suddenly rushes towards Damien and asks if he caused another incident. Damien tells him to not worry because he just went to clean up the mess he'd caused. Victor shows them the money he brought, and Damien says the tavern owner gave this to him as an apology. His parents are overjoyed to hear this. And did Victor backs Damien as well, remarking that every word he says is a lie. Later, as Damien is running, he warily remarks that he hasn't even run much, but he's already out of breath, and he can't do anything with this body. Still, he says he takes out something. It's a relief he got his hands on this. In a flashback, Ander tells Damien that this is a tonic from the school of alchemy that boosts stamina and vitality. Damien remembers that they're an alchemist whose tonics are very famous. Presently, he drinks the tonic and smiling. Lee says the effects are amazing, admitting that if he wants to get stronger quickly, he needs to build up his lacking stamina first. He says a few years from now, the Unda created Dorg will appear in the world, so he has to gain the strength to kill him before that, since only then will he be able to protect his family's happiness. He inwardly yells Dorgo, he will definitely kill him this time. In the Black Snake it's hideout. The boss says Ted was the best mercenary they hired, so this is a waste. The boss, Cedric, orders his lackeys to throw him away since a dog that served its purpose is no longer needed, and as long as they can pay, they can hire anyone. However, Ted gets up seeing which Cedric smilingly tells him to get treated, and they'll hire him again. However, he angrily says he doesn't need it and rushes forward to attack him. He's suddenly stopped when black strips bind him and start wildly swallowing him. A hooded man asks Cedric if he's satisfied, so he says he'd appreciate it if he completed the job more cleanly next time. He says the man's next job is to harm the person who harmed them, and the worse it is, the more he will pay. Cedric hands over the advance payment, so the man creepily thanks him and says he can count on him. Chapter 6. As Damien is exercising, he remarks that the potion's effects are quite drunk, and his stamina has improved noticeably in just a few days. Damien admits it's still strange that nothing has happened for days since he was sure the Black Snake would come for him. He suddenly senses something and grabs someone hiding in the bushes by their throat. However, he sees that it's Abel, his younger brother, who says he's gotten stronger since he last saw him, since he thought his neck was going to break. Damien says he didn't mean to do that and apologizes. Abel annoyingly says he didn't come here for an apology, since he heard from Paul that he went to the tavern and received an apology. However, he found out that a fight actually broke out. He asks Damien if he's lying to the family, but Damien says it's true, because he did it himself. Abel hurriedly asks if he hired someone since he can't fight, but Damien repeats that he did it. However, Abel tells him to stop lying since he may be able to fool the rest of the family but not him. In any case, he warns Damien to not cause any more trouble that could bring shame upon their house, considering how much they've had to clean up his messes. Damien cheerily pats Abel on the head and remarks that he always had a straightforward personality and was someone who cared for his family more than anyone. Damien tells him to not worry since there won't be any trouble, but Victor hurriedly rushes towards them and says something terrible has happened. Damien rushes into the hall to see the brother from before sitting across his parents. The boy tells Damien he arrived at just the right time since he was telling the Baron about what happened at the banquet hall. He apologizes for dropping by so suddenly, but his father found out, so he had no choice. Damien angrily remarks that he had a feeling, but it seems he's already messed with this guy. Yuan Lionbloom. Damien asks if he remembers what happened at the last social party. In a flashback, Damien angrily asks Ewan what he means, so Ewan cheerily says he didn't mean anything by it and apologizes if he was offended. Damien drunkenly says it wasn't enough to mock him, since he even made fun of his eyes, but he still says he meant nothing by it. Yuan sees that this guy is really drunk and asks when he ever said something like that. He whisperingly asks Damien what he's going to do if he says it. Hearing this, Damien angrily punched him in the face. He remarks that back then, he should have endured his provocations, since for a guy who was practically a full-fledged knight, it was strange that he so easily took the punch he threw. Yuan says this is an embarrassing story, but he has admired Lady Louise for a long time. Paul asks what he's trying to say, so Ewan asks for his permission for the marriage between himself and Lady Louise. Damien angrily sees that he's coming at it this way again since in his past life, he also threatened them by taking advantage of their weakness. Iwan says if they do that, they can reduce this incident to a simple matter, because then, the disrespect his family and he have suffered can be naturally overlooked. Paul says he cannot allow that, because Louise already has a fiancé she is in a relationship with. Yule asks how else he will take responsibility for the disrespect he has suffered and questions if the House of Haksen can handle the wrath of his family. Paul worryingly remarks that the Lionbloom family is one of the most influential noble houses in the Apple Kingdom, but he can't give his daughter to that lecherous scoundrel. Lao suddenly enters the room and says she will accept the proposal. Paul hurriedly objects and Abel says their parents will find a way, but she smilingly says she's fine and will follow Sir Iwan. Iwan smilingly gets up and says she is truly wise. He says he will formally send someone to her in the future, so that they can discuss the future. However, Damien steps in front of him and furiously punches him in the face, remarking that he had to endure it at that moment for the sake of his family, but he can't take it anymore. Thank you for watching. Do you like this manga so far? We'll be back for part 2 very soon. Please like and subscribe to JockJut Manhwa for more amazing videos. Listen up, warriors. Our scouts have just returned with a tale worth hearing. Today's title is Return of the Calamity-Class Death Knight. Our tale continues as in a flashback. The servants inform Damien that Lady Louise and Sir Iwan's carriage has just arrived. Damien happily rushes to greet them, remarking that it's been a long time since he met his sister. He opens the door but shockingly sees her getting beaten by Iwan. Iwan angrily asks if this is how she's acting even though he brought her home. He questions how she can say she's leaving him when she comes from a bug-like family that sold her off. He menacingly says he'll make sure she's properly trained so she never says such a thing again. As Louise gets abused, Damien depressingly collapses, realizing that his sister was taken away because of his sister. He furiously remarks that he'll never forgive Iwan. Presently, he punches Iwan in the face, hearing which his guards hurriedly rush in. They raise their swords and question if Damien was the one who hit their young master. Iwan questions how he dared to hit his face, not once but twice, and sees that he must really have a death wish. His guards ask him to calm down because they'll handle this since there are people watching right now. However, Iwan angrily punches one of the guards into the wall and orders them to move. Iwan asks Damien how he plans to resolve this situation. Louise remarks that he won't let Damien go and asks him to stop. However, Damien assures her he's alright since he'll take care of it, inwardly telling her to not sacrifice herself anymore, not because of him. He proposes a duel with swords, saying that if Iwan wins, he'll do as he wishes, but if Damien wins, Iwan will have to drop everything that's happened till now. Iwan asks why he should do that, when it doesn't sound like a deal that benefits him and Lady Louise has already agreed. Damien smilingly asks why he's dodging the point, and if he's scared he'll lose. Iwan furiously remarks that he got one lucky hit, and is full of himself now, but this works just fine for him, since he was wondering how he could make him pay. While he's at it, he inwardly declares that he'll cripple Damien, and steal Louise back, and accepts the duel. Later Damien's mother asks Paul to stop this duel, but he frustratingly mutters that Damien must have something planned, and if not, all they can do is hope for a miracle. Abel remarks that he's wrong, because Iwan is already at the level of a fully fledged knight, so there's absolutely no chance that Damien can win. Iwan asks Damien how he plans to fight him without a sword, so Damien says the only thing he needs for him is a fork. Iwan laughingly says it looks like he's gone mad with fear and rushes forward, declaring that he won't go easy on him. However, Damien dodges his attack, so he swiftly uses Lion's Roar fierce sword. However, Damien swiftly dodges all of his sword strikes, and remarks that it helps that he's been training recently, but he's already completely analyzed the Lionbloom sword style, since before the regression. He'd fought Michael Lionbloom, Ewon's brother, in a fierce duel. No matter how Ewon looks at it, he's far below his brother's level. Ewon furiously declares that he got lucky dodging that one, and asks if he can dodge his next attack. Damien sees that he's using aura now, and wonders what he should do since dodging that one will be tough. In this situation, he remarks that a sword saint technique would be best. As Ewon rushes forward, Damien blocks his sword with his fork, shocking Ewon. Damien swiftly knocks his sword away and stabs his throat. Blood slowly drips from Ewon's neck, due to the small puncture, and he falls down in fear. Damien remarks that killing him dozens of times wouldn't be enough considering what he's done. But for this one time, he'll do it only for his family's sake. He asks Ewon if this match has been decided and orders him to get lost as promised. Later, Damien finishes his meal and gets up for his morning training. After he's left, Paul's wife asks if he isn't going to ask Damien about what happened yesterday, and Abel still can't believe Damien beat Ewon so decisively. Paul says they should all pretend they don't know for now, and when the time comes, he'll tell them himself. He remarks that he's dying of curiosity too, but for some reason, he feels like he has to pretend he doesn't know, since Damien is his son, but he's too scary. Damien puts on 10 Kaji sandbags on his legs for physical training, and gets ready to head out. Louise is happy to see that he hasn't left yet, and tries saying something about yesterday. Damien realizes he should apologize for what he did, and quickly says sorry to her since he acted rashly, and put her in a difficult position. He admits he should have apologized sooner, and says he'll make sure something like this never happens again. However, Louise says that's not it, since she wanted to say thank you, and was actually scared, since even though she said she would go with Ewon, deep down, she was really scared. But then Damien stepped up for her and she felt sorry, but she was also really happy, which is what she wanted to really tell him. She happily thanks him, but Damien says he's the one who should be grateful to her. He decides to get going now, but she tells him to take a sword with him. He recognizes that it's father's one and only prized possession, so she cheerily said Paul gave it to her, and said Damien should use it for his training. She says their father may not be good at expressing it, but his worry and love for him are second to none, and he asked him to pass this on to him, as well, since a baron of all people shouldn't have to resort to using a fork for lack of a sword. Damien takes out the sword and smilingly thanks Paul for it. While as Paul is polishing his swords, he feels a sudden chill. Later in the night, as everyone is sleeping, a shadow suddenly swallows up the 2 guards outside the mansion. A man slowly makes his way inside the house and enters Louise's room. Standing over her, he menacingly says she's quite a beauty, remarking that he came on a request from the Black Snake. But this is an unexpected windfall. However, a voice angrily asks what he's doing as Damien is standing in the doorway. Damien mutters that he felt a strange energy, so he came to check, and it seems like a weird one really is here. The man frustratingly remarks that he made sure he put everyone to sleep with magic, so that guy shouldn't be unaffected, and he didn't even sense him getting close. He fires a beam at Damien, but he swiftly dodges away. The man questions who he is, but Damien says that's a question he should be asking since this is his house after all. The man asks if he is perhaps Damien Haksen, so Damien affirms this, and says it's now time for him to explain who he is, and what he was trying to do to his sister just now. They hear the servants asking what's going on, since the sound came from Lady Louise's bedroom. The man says it looks like the servants just woke up from that explosion. He mutters that it will be problematic for him if many people see him, so he doesn't have a choice, and he slowly gets swallowed by his shadow from the ground. Damien hurriedly tells him to stop right there, but he sees the man's shadow hurriedly rushing away. He wonders if he lost the man, and suddenly senses the dark energy on his window. In the morning, the servants start panicking and see that the prized horse is dead. They wonder what they're going to tell the Baron, since he'll be furious. One hurriedly says this is absurd since it was totally fine yesterday. Damien suddenly appears behind them and says he had a bad feeling. They hurry to make up an excuse, but he says there's no need to be nervous since he just came to confirm something and won't blame them. But he does need them both to step away for a moment. He remarks that he followed the trace of the man he lost last night and found a dead horse in the stable. He says there's no doubt about the fact that this disturbing aura is dark magic, which means that guy's a dark mage. He remarks that it doesn't look like the family is aware, so there's no need to unnecessarily worry them. Meanwhile, the man smilingly mutters that the dumb boss of the Black Snake brought him everything he asked for. He only said they were ingredients for a curse, so with this much, he won't need materials for a while. Still, he admits he must be getting old, since he has to take on cheap jobs like this, just to earn some pocket money. But he had no choice with the cult guys tracking him. He decides to stay low for a while, but someone suddenly says this stench is disgusting. The guy says this is why old men shouldn't live alone for too long, so he should maybe try ventilating the place, and the man is shocked to see it's Damien, the heir of House Haksen. He asks how Damien found him, so he says he followed his filthy stench. Shocked, the man says he heard Damien picked a fight with the Black Snake, so he isn't just some spoiled brat. Damien says it's good that he was on guard, since who knows when someone might barge in. He says the man must be one of the Black Snake's lackeys, so the man reveals that they told him to hurt the Haksen family as much as possible. Damien says it's pathetic that he took that job of all things, and is going to die now. The man manically says he's an interesting one, and declares that he won't get bored if he tortures Damien, and keeps him as his chat buddy. However, Damien says that might be a little tough, since he made a vow this lifetime to avoid killing anyone. Unless he has to, but there's one exception, and that is filthy dark mages like him. The man is stunned to see that he even figured that out, and realizes he's not ordinary. He says he'll be in trouble if Damien escapes now, and tells him to just die already as he starts firing several attacks at him. However, Damien dodges through the attacks and slashes through the man. The man's body suddenly starts regenerating, shocking Damien, who wonders if this is the power he saw back at the mansion. He admits the man is pretty skilled for someone who took on such a cheap job, and the man declares that that kind of attack won't work on him. However, Damien says he'll slice him to dust in that case, and keeps stabbing through him. The man cockily says that explains Damien's bold attitude, but the moment he walked in here of his own will, he was already a dead man. The shadows suddenly catch Damien, and start rushing towards him as the man reveals that he laid enchantments all over this place to prepare for the cult's pursuit. Damien realizes this could get very dangerous, as the man tells him to regret picking a fight with a Yulon commander, and tells every inch of his body to rot and die. As Damien's entire body is swallowed by the shadows, the man cheerily calls him an arrogant fool for hastening his own death. He mutters that he technically fulfilled the request, and decides to find the woman he saw yesterday now that the nuisance is gone. However, Damien suddenly sees that this is a curse of the corrosion type, and breaks free of the shadows. Shocked, the man asks how he knows about black magic, and Damien notices that he's really panicking. He remarks that he's a bit surprised too, and wonders how his authority is still active. In a flashback, Dorgo tells Damien that he gave him the strongest body, and imbued him with the greatest spells, but he's still not satisfied, since he is to be his ultimate sword and incarnation of pure evil. Therefore, he will grant Damien even this power to make him an absolute weapon. As a huge blast hits Damien, Dorgo declares that this is authority, and sees that he has it at long last, the authority of the gods, presently. Damien remarks that this is definitely the authority of greed he had obtained during his time as a Death Knight, even though he thought it had vanished after returning in time. The man slowly asks how Damien survived his magic, so he says everyone's got a hidden trump card, and remembers how that guy said he's an executive of Yulan. He inwardly says he's heard of Yulan, an organization that specializes in assassinations using black magic, so it's no surprise that this guy is so skilled. He admits the guy is giving off a bad vibe, so dragging this out could be risky, and he should end it now. The man mutters that he was saving this for when he was going to face the cult, but he'll bring it on now. His body suddenly starts glowing with green aura, and Damien mutters that that's a large amount of dark mana, so the bracelet must be an artifact that stores and conceals mana. The man says he doesn't know Damien broke his magic, but there's no way he can handle TIS power, and tells him to burn to death in the flames of hell. A huge blast of fire rushes towards Damien, after which the man smilingly remarks that it's over since what he was just hurt with was the eternal flame of hell, burning even in death. However, Damien says he's seriously mistaken, revealing that the authority of greed doesn't dispel it, it absorbs all dark mana entirely. Shocked, the man hurriedly asks how he possesses such a strong power, but Damien says it's not his business, and tells him to just think of it as him having better gear, remarking that it feels disgusting to use the power granted to him by the person he hates the most. But if he wants to take down the guy in front of him now, he'll have to use the techniques of the Death Knights. The man is shocked to see Damien using Aura Blade, and is about to ask him to wait, but Damien swiftly uses Severance Blade, cutting through the man's body. As the man is lying on the floor with collapsed rubble on top of him, Damien points the blade at his eyes, and says he'll lessen the pain if he talks before dying and questions where the Black Snake's hideout is. Later, as Damien and Victor are sitting in a carriage, he asks Damien why he's heading back to Landwalk, but he tells him to just follow him quietly. Victor says his face looks fresh, but the book he's reading looks sinister and asks what it is. Damien reveals that this is a black magic book he acquired recently, inwardly saying he did it by killing the Dark Wizard. The Victor mutters that he knows how dangerous it is to obtain a black magic book and wonders what that smell. But Damien gets out the carriage since they've arrived. He hands Victor a sack and reveals that it contains a human head. Victor thinks it's a joke and opens it to check, but he's shocked to see an actual head and collapses in fear. Damien tells him to calm down and agrees to tell him all the details later, but he says there's something he needs to do first. He says Victor has to deliver the sack and a small book somewhere since there won't be any trouble that way. A while later, as he's standing in front of a tall building, Damien says these gangsters are sure living the good life, since they set up their headquarters in the middle of the city. He introduces himself as Damien Haksen to the guards, who wonder what the hell he's doing. One suddenly remembers that he's the guy their boss was talking about, so Damien sees that they already know who he is, and tells them to step aside since he has business with their boss. The man agrees, surprising Damien, who admits they're reasonable. However, the man shoots a flare into the sky and asks if he really thought that's what they'd say. Numerous men suddenly surround Damien, as he sees that he's in a welcome party organized by the boss, and smilingly tells them all they're going to regret this. The governor of Landwalk, Sebastian Baker, cheerily says they're really living it up today thanks to Lord Cedric. The Guardian Knight, Robert, asks for another drink as Cedric says it's an honor for him that the two of them are enjoying themselves, and adds that it'd be an honor for him if they visited often without feeling burdened. Sebastian tells Cedric it's fine for the Black Snake to take over the businesses the other organizations used to own. He drunkenly says the Black Snake should manage all the city's entertainment districts, and declares that he'll easily suppress anyone who disagrees with his authority. Robert smilingly mutters that he feels bad that he can't help, but Cedric graciously says just protecting the city is something they should be thankful for. Sebastian and Robert tell him to say if he needs anything else, as Cedric remarks that bowing his head to trash like this won't last much longer, since they will be the ones bowing in front of him when the Black Snake takes over the city. A man hurriedly enters and tells Cedric he has something to report. Outside the room, Cedric is shocked to hear that Damien is here, and worryingly wonders what the Dark Wizard is doing. Cedric tells the guy he can go now, since there's nothing to worry about when Damien has just walked right into his own grave, even if the situation doesn't go as planned. Outside, Damien swiftly slashes through all the guys surrounding him. Cedric goes to the balcony just in case, and is shocked to see all his men killed. He questions how something like this could happen, and if Damien really did all this alone, when he'd only heard rumors that he was a low-life noble brat. He wonders if the dark mage he sent was also taken down by him, and hurriedly decides to call for help. Members of the cult try stopping Damien and attack him with fire, but he swiftly uses his secret technique, flow dispersal, to send it back at them, causing an explosion. Damien says that should take care of these guys, and decides to go check what kind of person the Black Snakey's boss is. However, he barely dodges a punch from a knight as Robert says he was wondering who was causing all this chaos, but he's just green rookie. Damien remarks that the aura is so intense, it's hurting his skin, which means he must be a certified knight. Damien sees that guards have surrounded him, as well as Sebastian declares that as governor of Landwalk, he will punish him. Damien asks why, so Sebastian declares that not only did he threaten the life of a good businessman like Cedric, he also attacked his business and injured dozens of innocent employees. It's a crime that can never be forgiven. Cedric remarks that no matter how reckless Damien is, there's no way he would dare harm someone protected by the governor of the city. Damien sees that he's finally found the Black Snake boss, and remarks that this is basically a cult-level following. He says it's funny that trash like Cedric are called a respectable businessman, and it looks like the governor's got terrible judgment. Sebastian orders him to shut his mouth and says, if he apologizes to Lord Cedric even now, his generous heart might reduce Damien's sentence. However, Damien says he can't apologize if he's done nothing wrong. Sebastian says he tried to go easy on him, since he's young, but tells Damien to not blame him for what happens next. Robert steps forward, introduces himself and orders Damien to drop his weapon and surrender immediately. He sees that there's not an ounce of fear, and asks if he's bold or stupid. Damien says he must be confident in himself, so Robert mutters that he's just stupid and attacks. Damien dodges, remarking that he says all that, but he'll have to just hold out until she gets here, since Robert is too strong for him to take on right now. Damien barely manages to block his punch and remarks that he still took a lot of damage. He wonders if she's still not here before Robert instantly appears in front of him and attacks. However, someone swiftly gets in front of Damien and blocks Robert's attack, knocking his sword away and shocking everyone around them. Robert questions who they are, so the girl takes off her hood. Shocked, Robert realizes she's a holy knight as Damien smilingly turns around to see Victor happily returning with two hooded figures. Thank you for watching. Do you like this manga so far? We'll be back for another part very soon. Please like and subscribe to JockJut Manhwa for more amazing videos. Cedric wonders why a paladin is here and realizes the order must have intervened. He alarmingly wonders if they came here already knowing that he made a deal with a black magician. Victor asks Damien if he's alright, but he says he's not, since he was about to die of boredom waiting for him. The girl sees that this man is the Order's paladin as Damien tells Victor it looks like he handled the task given to him properly. Victor cheerily says he may not be good at much else, but he's confident when it comes to running errands. A few hours earlier, Victor enters a church and nervously asks if this is the branch office of the Holy Order. The girl, dressed in a robe, confirms that it is and asks how she can help him, so Victor shows her the two items and says his young master asked him to deliver this to the Order as quickly as possible, since it's evidence concerning an individual who conspired with a black magician. Surprised, the girl asks Victor to show her the notebook, and remarks that the energy she's feeling is unmistakably black magic even if it's faint. She recognizes the crest on the book, and quickly takes the sack from Victor to take out the man's head. She inwardly says she's finally found him, an executive of Euron, Agido. She swiftly takes off her robes and asks where the person who delivered this notebook is now. Presently, she smilingly meets Damien, and tells him the Order intends to intervene from now, since the evidence was delivered safely. Damien agrees and tells her to do as she wishes, since they can't interfere with the wishes of the Order, so she thanks him. Damien remarks that everything is going according to his plan and explains that the Holy Order wishes to live its entire life as a servant of God, and while these people are beings who bestow endless goodwill, and mercy upon common people. When it comes to judging heretics and demons, they will burn their own souls without hesitation, so they're actually a group of fanatics, and the elite enforcement unit of such an order is none other than the Paladins. He remarks that the Paladins are on his side now, as the girl announces that their order has received a report that here, in Landwerk, there is an individual who has colluded with a wanted black magician, which is why they will identify the individuals involved, and will handle the management of the city. Sebastian questions what she means and declares that Landwerk is a city whose autonomy is recognized by the kingdom, so, for the order to say they'll be managing the city, is bypassing the governor general. The girl reminds him that judging a heretic is the will of God, and the authority of the order stands far above that of a kingdom. Sebastian is about to say he will formally protest this matter to the order, but the girl cuts him off, and says he and the guardian knight are also prime suspects. Sebastian questions what she means, so she reveals that Cedric is the very person who hid and even supported a black magician, so the act of protecting such a person in itself is enough to arouse suspicion. Sebastian hurriedly asks Cedric if this is true, but he says is slander and questions why he would do such a thing. However, the girl says the evidence is right here, but he's still denying it. She takes out the notebook, declaring that in this is a list of items he procured for the black magician, along with the places of purchase. All written down so they can obviously confirm this by cross-referencing it with the ledgers from the shops. Cedric angrily wonders why that magician would write something like this to down and hurriedly says this a misunderstanding, since he's never been involved in anything related to a black magician. However, the girl says that is something that will be revealed as they investigate from now on, and orders the other members to take them away. Sebastian hurriedly tells the members to let go of him and remarks that he can't let himself be dragged away like this, since who knows what'll happen to him after he's captured by these fanatics. Cedric hurriedly asks Robert if he's really just going to surrender like this, when these people are evil enough to frame people for crimes they didn't commit. Robert agrees and throws the members away from him, declaring that if he lets himself be dragged away like this, he'll just be another dead dog. He rushes forward to grab his axe and announces that he'll make his escape after killing all of them. However, as he's charging towards the girl, Damien remarks that he's making a mistake. She swiftly dodges Robert's attack and punches through Robert's stomach, muttering that if there is anyone who interferes with the work of God, no matter who they are, they will judge them by the will of God. As Cedric is forced to the ground, Victor sneers and asks if this is the one they call the boss of the Black Snake, so Damien smirks and confirms this, so Victor says he doesn't look like much. Infuriated, Cedric can't believe he ended up like this, because of a brat like Damien. As Damien says, this was handled cleanly thanks to the order. He remarks that she's stronger than he'd thought and believes she's a disciple of the Azure Flame, judging by the form of her power. Azure Flame Brigandine is one of the 5 great saints, and is considered the greatest power of the order. He was famous for striking down countless heretics. The girl tells Damien his contribution in executing an executive of Iran is immeasurable, so he says he only did what was necessary. This time, she says she won't hold him accountable for his sins in recognition of his contribution. Damien says he's not sure what she means, so she asks if he didn't call the order to cover up the fact that he attacked the Black Snake. Damien is surprised that she was able to see through his intentions so quickly and apologizes if he's offended her, explaining that the Dark Wizard not only cast a curse on their domain, he also tried to harm his family. The girl admits she can't hold him accountable under such circumstances, so Damien remarks that it looks like she's much more flexible than her reputation suggests. She tells Damien the bounty on Agio's head will be paid out as soon as possible, hearing which Damien remarks that it's 1,000 gold, enough to buy a small castle. However, he remarks that he wants something else from the order. He asks the girl if he can request something instead of the bounty, so she admits it's possible, but asks what he desires. Damien says he would like to receive one of the mana cultivation methods that the order possesses, surprising the girl, who asks why a man skilled enough to annihilate the Black Snake on his own needs a mana cultivation method. Damien remarks that after fighting the Dark Wizard, He realized it for certain he was lucky to win with the power of his authority, but to defeat even stronger enemies in the future, and to ascend to a higher plane, he absolutely needs a mana cultivation method, the training method of knights. He explains that it's because he's only learned a basic cultivation method, and wants to learn a higher one. Surprised, the girl remarks that she can already feel a considerable aura from his body. So if what he says is true, his talent is astounding. She sees that he also possesses the decisiveness to cut a heretic down without mercy, and says rather than receiving a mana cultivation method, there is a better way. She asks if he's interested in becoming a holy knight, but Damien instantly declines, so she questions when a holy knight is the most glorious position, and is extremely difficult to obtain. The Damien inwardly remarks that he's never had any faith his entire life, and he doesn't want to live as the Order's hunting dog. He says it's because he is still infinitely lacking to receive God's love, and for now, he wishes to wander the world and follow God's footsteps as just a single believer. Hearing this, the girl happily says it feels like her ears have been opened and agrees to provide a mana cultivation method instead of the bounty, surprising both Victor and Damien since they didn't expect that to work. The girl tells Damien to visit the Order if he ever changes his mind, since she'll greet him personally. She realizes they haven't introduced themselves, and says her name is Agnes, the first disciple of the Azure Flame. Damien says it was an honor to meet her and asks if he can finish his business now. So she tells him to do whatever he wishes and asks what he means. As Cedric is about to start insulting him, Damien starts beating him up, and happily says he feels better now. Victor asks Damien if it's really all over now, so he cheerily says it probably is. At the Lionbloom mansion, the Marquis of the Apple Kingdom, Holland Leonbloom angrily enters Aroin's room, and asks him what the meaning of this is. Aroin hurriedly says Damien tried to kill him, and put a fork to his neck, and his father is stunned by how scared he is. He tells him to speak up and asks his servants who did this, so a man reveals that it was Damien of the Haksen barony. Hearing this, Holland furiously throws several showpieces at the wall and questions how a mere Haksen dared to do this to his son. He believes he must have used some cowardly trick and orders for men to be sent to the barony right now, so that they can drag Damien here like a dog. As Agnes and two members of the Order introduce themselves to Paul, he frustratingly remarks that Damien caused trouble and brought zealots to the house. He says he heard they will be living here for a while, so Agnes says they'll have to do this for the investigation of the heretics. Paul nervously explains that the house is small, so he doesn't know if they have a room they can offer, but Agnes thanks him for his consideration, and takes out a huge sack of gold for his consideration, so he instantly tells them to think of it as their own home. Agnes thanks Damien for cooperating, and says the investigation is one thing, but she wants to look into something else. Paul and Damien's mother think something's going on between him and Agnes, but she gives him the mana training method he requested, and says these are specially selected ones. Damien thanks her but asks why she's giving him 2 volumes, so she says 1 volume is a sword technique, and if she only gave him the training method, it wouldn't be a pair, so she added this. Damien remarks that he doesn't particularly need swordsmanship, but there's no harm in taking it since it's a sword technique, and training methods he'd never seen in his previous life. She says it was difficult to bring these, so Damien thanks her, but she reveals that there was opposition within the Order. She tells him about what she had to say to convince her master, and asks if he wants to become a holy knight, but Damien apologizes, so she understands, and acknowledges that saying any more would be rude. As the members of the Order are examining Agito's cave, they remind themselves that Agito is an executive of the Euron, who has evaded the Order's pursuit multiple times. A guy says Agito is from the cursed school, so his combat power is on the weaker side. But even still, for a high-ranking magician like him, losing his life to a rural noble doesn't make sense. His senior admits he's had a similar thought, so the junior says they should at least suggest this to her once. However, Agnes enters behind them and says they can trust Damien Haksen. She says she understands they're suspicious, but he did not lie. The junior is still confused about how he killed Agito, so she says Damien said he roughly dodged and struck Agito's neck. Shocked, the junior asks if that's really true, so she mutters that she doubted his skills as well when his servant arrived with Agito's head and watched Damien for a bit before intervening. alone against dozens of people. He didn't even get a scratch and overwhelmed them with the most surprising thing, being that he let a magical fireball flow past him. She says she's heard a sword master-level expert can withstand any attack even if it's magic. She reveals that the main reason she came here was to track Euron, but she also wants to take Damien to her master, since he could become a great asset to the Order. 3 knights from the Lionbloom family, Alpus, Lavender and Gierig, finally arrive at the Haksen mansion, and Gierig reminds them that the mission given to them is to arrest Damien Haksen. He mutters that catching that trash is a very easy task, but young Master Eroin and the Marquis family can't repay the insults they received with just that. He notices an old man slowly walking beside them and asks if he's a subject of Baron Haksen. When the man confirms this, Gierig instantly slashes off his head and questions how a mere subject dared to not bow his head after seeing the Lionbloom crest. He menacingly tells Lavender and Alpus he's got a great idea and says they will tear Damien Haksen apart when they reach the mansion, as well as slaughter everything in sight. As Agnes and the members are leaving the cave, they suddenly notice Damien meditating, and she wonders how he was able to reach the final stage of the technique she gave him in just a few hours. Damien gets up when he sees them, and inwardly admits this was very useful to him. As Damien and Agnes act awkwardly around each other for a few months, he quickly says it's time for dinner, and says they should head back, but he suddenly senses a killing intent, and mutters that the vermin has arrived. He says he'll have to go on ahead since something urgent has come up, and asks Agnes to take her time coming back. As he rushes off, Agnes is surprised by how little mana he's using, and wonders just what his limit is. The Lionbloom Knights beat Victor up and question who he is to defy them when they told him to bring Damien Haksen. However, Victor hurriedly says they're just going to try to harm Damien. Paul hurriedly rushes forward and asks what the meaning of this is, questioning how knights like them can assault a commoner like this. However, Gierig says this is nothing compared to what the House of Haksen did to the Lionblooms. He declares that the Marquis Lionbloom wants Damien Haksen, so if they hand him over obediently, they won't harm this domain. Paul remarks that he expected some sort of retaliation, but he didn't think it would be this barbaric. Gierig remarks that this is obviously a lie, since after they hand over Damien, he'll turn this place into a sea of fire. Paul declares that he cannot hand over his son, so Gierig orders Alpus and Lavender to destroy everything here until Damien comes out. Paul is about to try and stop them, but Damien suddenly asks if the insects have gone mad and slowly walks towards them. Lavender and Alpus ask Damien who he is, but they suddenly realize their bodies can't move. Damien asks Paul if he's alright, so Paul confirms that he's fine, but Victor isn't. Damien sees that these knights haven't been told they're lucky and mutters that if Victor didn't have a sturdy body, he would have died, unable to withstand their assault, and if that happened, he might have beaten all of them to death. Gierig sees that he's just a madman and asks if he's gotten too full of himself after defeating Eroin with some petty trick. Gierig orders Alpus and Lavender to shatter Damien's legs and bring him over, but as one rushes forward, Damien remarks that he was just waiting to properly use the mana he's accumulated. Damien effortlessly crushes Lavender's hand and punches him away before kicking Alpus in the face. As the two fall down, Damien asks Victor if he's okay, so he smilingly gives him a thumbs up, seeing which Damien smiles and remarks that he really is an interesting one. Gierig questions if Eroin didn't lost because of a cowardly trick and mutters that no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't understand how a scoundrel like him possesses such skill. Damien says he doesn't need to know, but Gierig says he's realized that he isn't Damien Haksen. He declares that Damien is just a pathetic stand-in brought here to tarnish the honor of the Lionbloom family. Damien realizes this guy is more of an idiot than he looks. Gierig takes out his sword, remarking that he seems quite skilled, but his luck ends here, because the moment he enters his range, he'll cut him in the blink of an eye. However, as Gierig strikes, Damien swiftly blocks his sword, and smilingly sees that the Lionblooms sent a formal knight this time. Gierig is shocked to see that he blocked him, but says he just got lucky. However, Damien effortlessly blocks all his attacks, and says he's too slow before rushing forward, making several cuts on his face. Jirig remarks that he can't see his attacks before Damien suddenly kicks him in the face. As Jirig is thrown away, Damien says that was for Victor. Jirig furiously rushes forward to attack him, using his secret technique Swift Lion's majestic sword. Damien mutters that that's flashy but pointless and easily destroys his sword before cutting off his arm. As Jirig collapses in pain, he desperately admits he lost and begs Damien to spare his life. But Damien says he should have begged sooner, since he acted violently towards his family, and made his family's ugly servant even uglier. Jirig hurriedly admits he was wrong and asks for forgiveness, but Damien says it looks like he's confused about who he should be apologizing to, as Victor and Paul menacingly approach Jirig with their weapons. As Alpus, Lavender and Jirig are sitting on the ground in their beaten-up state, Victor asks Damien if he's still not satisfied and if he can beat Jirig up a little more, but Damien says he'll die if they do that. Damien admits they can just slice off their limbs, but Paul says that's enough. The Jirig admits he was wrong and apologizes for all the disrespect he showed him, but Paul questions if he thinks a single apology is enough and reminds him that if his son wasn't this strong, their territory would have been destroyed and his son would have been dragged off to the Lounbloom mansion to be tortured. Jirig gets on his knees and asks him to have mercy, so Paul looks over at Damien, who remarks that he can't kill them for the sake of his family, but if he sends them back quietly like this, more will definitely come back for revenge. Agnes hurriedly arrives at the mansion and asks what happened, so Damien realizes this might be useful again. After learning about the dilemma, Agnes says, since they were able to kill an executive of the Huron with the help of the Haksen family, they can make the Haksens an allied house. Paul realizes they will be able to escape this dilemma if that happens, and Damien innocently asks Agnes if he can ask for help in that case. He menacingly asks Jirig if he heard that, and tells him to go tell the Marquis of Lounbloom that the Haksen family is now under the church's protection. So if they try to use force again, they'll be dealing with the church's wrath. Jirig, Alpis and Lavender hurriedly thank him and run away. Victor says they ran away with their tails between their legs so they can finally relax a bit. But Paul says they'll hold a family meeting to figure out what to do next in the house. Abel asks why they need to figure out a deal with the Lounblooms when they have the church's protection. So Paul says it's because they can't take church to mediate, and the Marquis family doesn't just have military power, so they can crush weak nobles like them in many ways. So what comes to mind now is either paying them off or becoming vassals under another great noble house. However, Agnes announces that there is one more option for Damien to become a holy knight. Damien instantly refuses, so Paul understands that that option is off the table now. Abel angrily asks why he's accepting that so easily when this is Damien's problem, and says he should take full responsibility. However, Paul menacingly tells him to sit down and reminds him that they have guests. Paul reminds him that when they think about it, Damien actually protected Louise from Aroin. He appreciatively tells Damien he did really well today, surprising him. Damien says it was the right thing to do, as Paul asks him to take care of this from here on out. The servant informs Paul that someone from the Gold Pixie ducal family is here, because Damien borrowed money from them, and the deadline's already passed, hearing which Paul angrily grabs Damien by the scruff. Thank you for watching! Do you like this manga so far? We'll be back for another part very soon. Please like and subscribe to JockJut Manhwa for more amazing videos.
The story continues as Damien meets a guy and remarks that he barely remembers him. The man, Orlin, the Western branch manager of Dash and Cash, says he's come today because it's the repayment date he promised. Damien remembers how Orlin suggested that they can use his family's estate as collateral, since they could extend way more credit that way. He frustratingly wonders why his past self handed over the land deed and asks Orlin how much he owes him. Orlin says the 200 gold he borrowed plus interest comes to a total of 300 gold, shocking Damien, who inwardly says it's been so long that he doesn't even remember why he borrowed the money. But one thing's for sure, they don't have that much in the family treasury right now, and at this rate, their household will be out on the streets. Orlin reminds Damien that if the debt isn't repaid today, the collateral land will become property of Dash and Cash. Damien asks if that collateral wasn't just a formality, but Orlin asks what they can do when Duke Goldpixie has specifically ordered them to recover all their debts, regardless of noble or commoner. He tells Damien to pay if he understands, and questions if he can't pay. Damien admits he couldn't prepare the money, seeing which Orlin menacingly sits down and says he shouldn't have borrowed money in the first place. He says it looks like he'll have to collect it the way he's good at, and his bodyguards slowly approach Damien. Orlin remarks that he knew from the start he wouldn't be able to pay, and he likes the money, but this moment is what he truly enjoys, seeing these arrogant nobles groveling in front of him. He remarks that imaging how young Master Haksen will react is giving him chills. Paul's wife tells him to sit down and rest, since he'll wear a hole in the floor at this rate, but he questions how he can sit when their family might fall into ruin. Abel agrees and asks how they can just sit still when the fate of their house is at stake. However, his mum says Damien said he'd take care of it, so they should trust him and wait. And Louise reminds them that Damien's never failed when he took action before. Paul says that's because his sword skills are exceptional, but negotiation and combat are two different matters. Damien smashes the bodyguard into the floor and mutters that his father's going to give him an earful. The other bodyguard rushes towards Damien, but he grabs his neck and says this counts as self-defense since he drew his sword on a noble. Damien sees that Orlin's legs are shaking and admits he can't repay that much money right now. Orlin says that's fine, but Damien says he can pay it another way, so Orlin nervously agrees. The next day, Abel tells Paul he's feeling really sad right now since Justice was forced to bow to violence. He questions why and how this happened, so Paul tells him to quit his whining and cheer for his brother who's off on a long journey. He remarks that he had no choice but to accept it, but he's still worried whether that solution of Damien's would rally work. Agnes tells Damien it's a shame to be parting, so he thanks her for all her help, but she says that's the least she could have done. Agnes says the investigation is mostly finished, so they'll be heading back tomorrow, and she wishes that his journey is blessed. Damien asks Victor if they should get going now that the farewells are over, so he confirms that the luggage has already been loaded. In the carriage, Damien sees that it's quite spacious, and Orlin nervously says he's made sure that there won't be any discomfort while Lord Damien is away. Damien tells him to keep up that good attitude and serve lobster for lunch. As the carriage starts moving, they get going to Duke Goldpixie's estate. When they reach the mansion, Damien tells Orlin he won't forget what he's done for him if this goes well. Orlin says he may go in since they've informed the Duke, angrily remarking that Damien treated him like a dog the whole time while leaving his own attendant alone, and hopes everything falls apart and he drops dead. Duke of the Apple Kingdom. Adam Goldpixie sees that Damien is the brat from the Haksen family, so Damien smilingly thanks him for recognizing him. Adam says he heard from Demishi that Damien was looking for him and asks what the reason behind that is. He reveals that he borrowed a bit of money from the dukedom's loan company and the repayment date is fast approaching. Damien says he's afraid he doesn't have the money right now, so he'd like to repay the debt in another way. He reveals that instead of repaying the debt, he'll defeat the Lionbloom family and offer him the victory. Adam cheerily says it sounds like he came after hearing the rumors, and his guard knight, Jael, admits that seems to be the case. Damien remarks that there isn't anyone in the Apple Kingdom who hasn't heard the rumors. Recently, on the border between the Lionbloom Marquisate and the Gold Pixie Dukedom, a large gold mine was discovered. The two families who are long-standing rivals are preparing for a duel between low-class knights to determine ownership of the mine, and he already knows the outcome because this duel ends in the Lionbloom's overwhelming victory. Afterward, the Lionbloom Marquisate rapidly expanded its power by claiming the gold mine. In contrast, Gold Pixie began to lose its influence as a result, so to sum it up, if he helps the Duke win, he can not only pay off his debt but also keep the Lionblooms in check. Adam calls him a bold fellow and sees that rumor about him taking down the Lionbloom family's second son and crushing a major organization in Landwalk City must have been true. Damien laughingly admits it's not entirely false, so Adam says he's been having a hard time finding a knight for the duel anyway. Damien says he's the perfect candidate in that case since there's no other low-class knight who can face the Lionbloom heir besides him. Adam asks if he's truly saying he can defeat Michael Lionbloom, the one known as a once-in-a-generation genius, so Damien says he is impressive, but he definitely won't lose. A knight tells Adam he shouldn't believe everything that man says since rumors tend to be exaggerated, and Lady Chelsea will surely return with a suitable candidate. The knight, Ernst, reminds him that Grand Duchess Chelsea said she would find a knight to face Michael Lionbloom, and it's been a month since she left, so she should be returning soon. He adds that she has always passed His Excellency's tests with flying colors, so she will definitely bring back an exceptional knight this time too. Adam admits his arguments are valid, as Damien remarks that he looks like a bone an orc chewed up and spat out, and now he's spoiling the moment. Adam asks Damien what he thinks he should do, so Damien inwardly says he'll have to prove himself through his actions. Damien says they're all making a huge mistake since whoever Chelsea brings can't even compare to him, and they must make him the representative if they want to win the duel. Ernst asks who he is to make such a foolish claim before even knowing who Chelsea will bring, so Damien decides to block his strike, since if he does, he'll be able to clearly show them his true strength. Ernst furiously questions how the low-class punk dares to mock him, and asks Adam if he can teach this brat a lesson, so Adam decides to permit it. Outside, as Damien and Ernst get ready for the duel, Victor asks if he wasn't going to persuade the Duke, so he smilingly says it just kinda turned out this way. Ernst tells Damien he'll forgive him if he kneels and begs now, but Damien mutters that he's weary, so they should speed this up. Ernst sees that he's begging to be killed and tells Damien to use whatever he likes. So Damien remarks that it looks like he went too far with the provocation as Ernst furiously shouts that he'll pierce that smug face of his. As he rushes forward, Damien remarks that blocking isn't too hard as long as you know where he's going to strike. However, Ernst smilingly sees that he fell for his feint and stabs Damien in the chest, shocking Victor. Ernst is shocked to see that Damien withstood his surprise attack, and Damien asks if the position of the representative is his now. Victor hurriedly asks Damien if he's okay since he really thought something terrible had happened. Adam says it's very impressive that Damien withstood Ernst's attack, remarking that he was doubtful but he really is the real deal, so they've got a gem here. He announces that, as promised, he will appoint Damien Haksen as the representative. Ernst starts to object, but Adam menacingly tells him to not ruin his good mood right now. Ernst wonders what just happened since he's sure he hit Damien just now. So Damien inwardly admits his skills weren't bad. The opponent was just better, remarking that he's already beyond the middle class, but since only low-class knights are allowed to participate, he had to fake his level, and he made sure it was convincing enough to fool anyone. If he hadn't quickly used his magic to shield himself in that split second, he could have been in real danger. Adam sees that it looks like Damien has suffered some internal damage. He uses a subspace magic item to take out a box and says this is a gift for him, revealing balance pills inside it. He admits he paid a high price to get it from alchemy school, and like the elixir from last time, it boosts one's physical abilities. Adam explains that knights usually take it during training, but it's great for internal damage too. Damien thanks him, so he says he looks forward to working with him. The next day, Damien says that elixir works really well since his internal injuries have almost completely been healed overnight, and as expected of a duke's household, there are great training tools too. He decides to train using these from today before a guy meets him and introduces himself as Pavel Vermont before revealing his sworn brothers and declaring that they're also dual knights participating in the upcoming match. He says they were all out training in the field yesterday, so they weren't around, but if they'd been there, they would have dealt with him instead of Sir Ernst. He annoyingly declares that the duel with Lionbloom is a matter of honor for the Duke's house, so he hopes Damien's mediocre skills don't drag them down. He orders Damien to step aside and not interrupt their training if he understands, so Damien gets out of the way, remarking that he was curious about the Duke Knight's skills anyway, and he'll get a chance to see for himself now. As Ernst and Pavel start fighting their 987th duel, he's shocked to see that Pavel saw through his attack and blocked it with his forehead. He admits he's learnt something new today, so Pavel says he's improved too and asks if that means this is a draw. Another guy asks Pavel to spar with him next since he's itching to move, so Pavel tells him to catch his breath before he takes him on. Pavel tells the knights that they will definitely defeat Lionbloom and restore the honor of the Duke's house, seeing which Damien realizes he's screwed, and slowly tells Victor he thinks they're doomed for this duel. Victor asks where that's coming from all of a sudden, so Damien admits he doesn't think he can win with those idiots. Last night, Damien thanked Adam for the offer but said that he prefers to train alone. Adam cheerily says Damien is quite an amusing fellow since he turned down being instructed from Jail himself. He asks Jail what he thinks of Damien, so he admits he's an impressive young man since he used mana in an instant to block Ernst's strike, and not just anyone can pull that off. Adam asks Jail how he thinks the duel will go, and if they can really defeat Lionbloom, so he admits it's hard to say for sure, since 3 duelists participate, and the first to win 2 rounds takes the match, so just Damien Haksen going well doesn't guarantee a win for all. Adam says the rest of their knights must perform well too, and asks how training is going. So Jail believes there's no need to worry since Sir Sebastian Vincenzo from the middle class is overseeing it. Meanwhile, Damien admits this is worse than expected, since not only are they stupid, their stamina's garbage and they're all style. No substance, and with that level of skill, they're sure to lose. He mutters that it looks like he has no choice but to step in and tells them to spar with him. Pavel sees that he's challenging them after seeing their skills and admits it takes guts. He decides to take the challenge first, but Damien asks what they're talking about and orders them all to come at him at once. They all furiously rush towards Damien as Pavel declares that the stick works the best with a rabid dog. However, Pavel finds himself on the ground and Damien calls them pathetic. 5 minutes earlier, Damien easily dodged all their attacks and knocked them unconscious. Pavel wonders if he blacked out and realizes Damien actually overpowered the three of them, wondering what kind of monster he is. Damien asks the three who trained them and is surprised to hear a middle-class knight trained them to be this pathetic. He remarks that he would honestly tell them to quit that training immediately, but there's no need to start any drama. He tells them to come here after Sir Vincenzo's training, since they'll be spring with him every day. Pavel says, Sir Vincenzo might have a problem if he finds out they're getting beat up, but Damien tells him to not worry since no matter how much he hits them, he'll make sure there isn't a single mark. Pavel wonders how he can do that, so he reveals that he learned how to beat people up in a very specific way back in the day. Long ago, there was a man who traveled the continent, making a living reforming criminals. He was known as the character corrector, and his method of correction was very simple. First, beat them for 1 hour. If that doesn't work, double the beating time, and there's a rumor that he once beat someone continuously for 512 hours. Over time, he began to feel pity for the criminals he left bloodied and wondered how he could beat them without endangering their lives. Before he knew it, he had reached the level of a master. That state is called Amsa My Kill. That's the very secret technique he used to beat them all just now. It inflicts pain without leaving a single scratch. He tells them to not worry since they have a month until the duel, and within that time, he'll turn them into something usable. He says they should get back to training, but a butler hurriedly informs Damien that His Grace is looking for him since Grand Duchess Chelsea has just returned. Chelsea gets down on her knees in front of Adam and announces that she has returned, so he asks if she's brought the knight they intend to enter the duel with since it's been exactly 1 month. She confirms that she has, and a man introduces himself as Guillaume Blackwing, the wild beast. The knights discuss how they'd heard he took part in the conflict in the kingdom of Eklinant and nearly wiped out all low-class knights. Adam says he has heard much about him because of how they say he goes wild like a beast on the battlefield, which has led to him earning his title. Guillaume sees that his reputation has reached even the Apple Kingdom before Chelsea says he has pledged loyalty to her and agreed to participate in the upcoming duel, and he should be more than enough to face Michael Lionbloom. The knight admits Guillaume ranks higher in terms of reputation alone. Adam admits it's good news, but it's also a bit of a headache. Chelsea asks what he means. He introduces the one who has become the representative of this duel, Sir Damien Haksen. Chelsea asks what he means when she specifically asked him to wait, so Adam says she may have said that, but he never said he'd wait. Chelsea says he can just change the representative now, but Adam mutters that that's something he'll have to think about. Chelsea questions if that isn't an obvious decision and says she's never even heard of the name Damien Haksen, declaring that it's only natural to choose Sir Guillaume Blackwing over a nobody like him. Adam says that may be true, but Damien is a knight skilled enough to withstand a blow from Ernst. Chelsea sneers and sees that he finally found the perfect excuse to not acknowledge her abilities. Adam warns her to watch her tongue in front of their guests, so she laughingly says, the fatigue must have clouded her judgment. Damien sees that these two clearly have some deep-seated issues. Adam says he doesn't want any more arguing over this, but Guillaume starts laughing and says the strongest one should be the representative in the end, suggesting that whoever wins gets the spot. Chelsea tells him to stay quiet, but Adam admits he's not strong and asks Damien what he thinks. Damien inwardly admits a bit of a show of skill is necessary. He acknowledges that Guillaume is right, but there might be a way to settle this without fighting. He suggests that they can settle this right here and now with a show of strength, so Guillaume laughingly tells him to not blame him if his arm gets ripped off. Damien sees that he's brutal and decides to just pull out his shoulder to be nice. Guillaume gets ready to grab his wrist, but Damien slams him down, shocking Chelsea, who wonders what the hell happened. Jael remarks that Guillaume went for Damien's hand first, but Damien turned that power against him and flung him aside, so not just his technique, but his physical ability is superb too. Guillaume furiously takes out his axes and declares that he will shred him with pain. Jail suddenly orders Guillaume to stop and questions how he dared to swing his weapon so carelessly in front of his grace. He asks Guillaume if he has a death wish, seeing which Damien inwardly admits he truly is impressive since that much pressure from just a basic aura release proves that he's high class. Jail says he will overlook this once in respect for Chelsea, but he should keep in mind that he won't get a second chance. Adam gets up, saying that, judging by what he saw, it seems like Sir Damien remains the representative. However, Ernst says that wasn't a fair match since Guillaume hadn't fully recovered from his travels, and that match gave Damien a clear advantage. He adds that Guillaume is a knight who uses weapons so they can't judge his skill when he's barehanded. Chelsea agrees and says they should hold an official duel, but Adam annoyingly tells her to stop showing her incompetence. She realizes C overstepped, but Damien asks if he can accept Chelsea's proposal. Later, Victor asks Damien why he accepted the proposal when he had nothing to lose by staying quiet, so Damien says he has his reasons. He asks if this is the workshop the Grace mentioned, remembering how Adam said he won't stop him if that's what he wants, but his longsword was damaged during his fight with Ernst, so they'll get him a new one made here in the Duke's smithy. When they enter the shop, the craftsman shows them his work, and Damien admits all these weapons really do look amazing. His eyes land on a sword, so the craftsman admits it's quite a special sword and reveals that it was once commissioned by a knight once employed by the Duke's family, but before it was finished, he had to leave due to urgent matters, so it never reached its intended owner. Damien asks if that knight happened to provide resonance steel for its forging, remarking that its shape resembles a favorite weapon once used by the swordmaster known as Sword Maestro. Damien says he'll take the sword, so the man asks if he's choosing it despite knowing it's made with resonance steel. Damien inwardly explains that unlike typical rare metals that amplify mana, resonance steel has the unique trait of repelling mana and generating waves. He asks if it has a name, so the craftsman reveals that the knight who commissioned it said he would call it Thousand League Sword. A woman enters and asks Damien if he's found a weapon to his liking, introducing herself as Rebecca, in service to Lady Chelsea. She asks if he has a moment to talk to her lady and says she holds more cards than he expects. Damien agrees and tells her to lead the way, so Rebecca takes him to an exclusive restaurant and says she's waiting inside, so Damien wonders what kind of offer she'll make and is surprised by the scent coming from the room. Thank you for watching. Do you like this manga so far? We'll be back for another part very soon. Please like and subscribe to JockJut Manhwa for more amazing videos.
The story continues as Damien asks Chelsea why she called him here, so she sees that he's impatient and suggests that they talk over the meal once it's served. However, Damien says he doesn't want to waste time and tells her to say it now. In that case, she reveals that she only has one request and tells him to step down as representative. He asks if she doesn't trust Guillaume Blackwing, so she tells him to not get the wrong idea, because once Guillaume picks up his axe, someone like Damien is worth nothing, but it's just that she wants him to save his strength for the duel with the Marquise's house, since it would be troublesome if he got injured from some meaningless duel. Damien sees that that reasoning makes sense, but asks why he should accept this request and what benefit is there for him. Chelsea says she'll give him whatever he wants if he gives up his spot as the representative. Damien asks how she knows what he wants, so she asks if it isn't obvious what a countryside noble like him would want: money, fame, stuff like that. Damien remarks that she judges others really arrogantly and asks if the Duke wouldn't be more suited to offer these things. Chelsea says things might look like that for now, but tells him to think about it and asks if it isn't better to be in the good graces of the future Duke. If he understands, she orders him to go tell her father he's stepping down as representative. However, Damien declines, shocking Chelsea, who says that doesn't make any sense. He sees that she's panicking because he's not affected by allure scent, a type of black magic that induces false affection, and uses it to manipulate the target at will. Because Damien retained all his black magic knowledge from his previous life, he noticed the scent the moment he entered the room, as well as the enchantment incense. Normally at this concentration, anyone would become a slave within an hour, but thanks to the power of greed, he absorbed it all. He gets up and asks what exactly doesn't make sense, but she hurriedly corrects herself and questions why he's refusing this when she said she'd give him everything he wants. Damien says he doesn't need anything from her since she couldn't give him what he wants in the first place. She hurriedly asks what it is that he wants so badly, so Damien coldly says it's his family's happiness and starts leaving. He tells her to tell Guillaume Blackwing to prepare for the duel, so Chelsea says he must value his family a lot and decides to put this another way. She orders him to step down as the representative because if he doesn't, she'll send people to crush the Haksen household completely. However, before she's able to finish, Damien suddenly grabs her by the throat and slams her into the table. She asks how he dared to lay a hand on her. She hurriedly tells him to let go of her before her guards barge into the room and take out their swords. Damien picks up a knife and swiftly slices the guards' throats, saying he only hurt them lightly, so if they apply a potion immediately, they won't die. He tells Chelsea he'd like to sever her head here and now, but he'll restrain himself since that would be far too merciful a punishment, and she should look forward to seeing just how horrible things get for her later. Rebecca hurriedly asks Chelsea if she's alright, so Chelsea madly swears she'll kill him and calls Mustang Fury. She questions what the hell happened and why the allure scent didn't work on Damien, so he says he's not sure either, but some people have strong resistance to black magic, so that might be what helped him. However, she angrily throws something at his head. She asks where Guillaume Blackwing is, so he explains that he's at the tavern right now and said he needed to cool off after today's events. Chelsea furiously asks if he's getting drunk a night before the duel and asks Mustang if he's sure Guillaume can beat Damien. Mustang assures her he's sure and declares that Guillaume is the pride of Iran and he's never seen a knight more gifted for black magic than him. He asks her to be patient since they will make sure to hand the dukedom to her, so Chelsea threateningly says he better keep that promise or she'll kill all of them first, and Mustang hurriedly says he'll remember that. Damien remarks that he didn't exactly think he and Yura would run into each other here again. As expected, Chelsea Gold Pixie was connected to the black mages, so it's certain that the aura he felt from Guillaume back then was black magic. Rather than going through the trouble of explaining it to the Duke, he decides it'd be better to just show him in person tomorrow. The next morning, Pavel says Guillaume looks incredibly strong, so the other guy asks who he thinks will win. Pavel says it should be Guillaume Blackwing if they go by reputation alone, so Ernst asks if that means they'll be free from the demon Damien Haksen since what he's done to them for the past 2 days has been nothing but beating them up under the guise of training, so he's clearly enjoying it. Pavel says he hopes that man loses too, but he just doesn't see him losing at all. Guillaume sees that Damien didn't run away after all, but Damien sees that he might have slept funny since his shoulders are really stiff. Adam says it looks like he's the one who's late, and says as promised, whoever wins today will take the role of the representative, and tells Chelsea he expects everyone to respect the outcome. Chelsea inwardly tells him to enjoy himself while he still can since Guillaume will win this duel. Adam announces the start of the duel. Guillaume tells Damien accepting this duel was his biggest mistake and declares that he'll show him exactly why they call him the Wild Beast. However, Damien calmly flicks his sword, throwing Guillaume away. Shocked, Guillaume asks what that was just now, and Adam smilingly says, "That's a pretty strange technique." Guillaume asks what kind of ridiculous trickery this is and questions how he calls himself a knight. However, Damien calmly keeps flicking his sword, and Guillaume starts bleeding from the pressure. Damien says it looks like playtime is over and sticks his sword into the ground, sending further waves towards Guillaume, who screams in pain and suddenly throws up tar. Adam asks why Guillaume is acting like that, and Chelsea watches in shock. Damien tells Guillaume his true identity has been revealed as Guillaume wearily falls unconscious. Damien announces that Guillaume is a fake knight who enhanced his physical strength and mana through dark magic. The men wonder how something like this could happen and realize they'll face severe consequences if the church catches wind of this, so they must get to the bottom of this. Adam asks Damien if he knew this all along, so he apologizes for not reporting it sooner and says he wanted to uncover the person behind it first. He reveals that there are dark mages who have infiltrated the ducal house and the person connected to them. Shocked, Chelsea hurriedly swears she has nothing to do with this, but Adam furiously mutters that the circumstances make it hard to deny this and he didn't want to believe it, but he questions how she dared to bring such filth into his house. He asks the guards why they're just standing there and orders them to immediately seize everyone related to Lady Chelsea and throw them in the dungeon so that they can get to the truth. Chelsea hurriedly declares that this is a mistake and assures him she's innocent, but the guards swiftly surround her, so she remarks that if she gets taken now, it'll all be exposed. She orders her guards to protect her, so they swiftly start fighting Adam's guards, seeing which Adam orders Gaul to place Chelsea Goldpixie under arrest immediately. Gaul steps forward and menacingly orders the guards to make way, and they shockingly realize they're no match for him since he's high class. They tell Chelsea to run while she can, since they'll hold them off. However, Gaul says that's a shame and slices his sword in the air, instantly killing both the guards. Horrified, Chelsea starts screaming and hurriedly tells Gaul to stay away before begging Ernst to help her. He hurriedly gets in front of her, seeing which Gaul tells Ernst he's contributed greatly to the growth of the ducal house as a mid-class knight. Moreover, His Grace holds him in high regard, but if he chooses to protect Lady Chelsea, he will be executed on the spot. Ernst collapses, and the guards grab Chelsea, who hurriedly asks her father to listen and declares that she didn't do anything. However, Adam calls her a useless fool and says their entire house may face ruin because of what she's done. She's dragged them all through the mud, and even now all she cares about is saving herself. He disgustingly says bringing her to this family was the greatest mistake of his life, but Chelsea hurriedly says that's not true, so Adam mutters that he can't listen to another word of this and tells the guards to take her away, seeing which Damien slowly smiles. A few days later, as a man is being tortured, he wearily says he knows nothing anymore, and it's just that when he smells that scent, he falls for the Archduke's daughter. Gaul announces that that's enough and orders his men to bring in the next one. He remarks that as expected, the Archduke's daughter expanded her influence within the duchy with the help of the dark mages and wonders why she would do such a thing. As Chelsea is lying in a cell, she angrily remarks that she ended up like this because of him, when she just wanted to be acknowledged. She only wanted him to recognize her as his daughter. That's all she ever wanted to do, so she questions why he still looks at her with such cold eyes. The guard arrives with her food, so she starts eating and tells herself she can't end it like this. No matter how humiliating this is, she must survive somehow. Meanwhile, Damien returns from today's training to see Victor, who says the Duke is looking for him. Adam pours Damien some wine and tells him to try a sip. Damien says that's a fine drink, so Adam thanks him for recognizing it and says it's not particularly expensive, but it's his favorite. He takes out angelic cheese from the Blanco region and tells him to try some with the wine since they pair well. Damien thanks him and takes a piece, so Adam reveals that they've decided to accept help from the Order. Damien says that's unexpected since he thought Adam would conduct a bit more investigation himself. Adam says he feels ashamed, especially after Damien's help, but they lost all the dark mages since they caught all of Chelsea's aides, but not a single one of them was a dark mage. He says he thought Damien should be informed, as Damien annoyingly questions how they got away and wonders if he should have gotten involved after all. Adam says they've decided to leave their pursuit to the Order to avoid any misunderstanding with them. Damien asks if Chelsea said anything about the identities of the dark mages, but Adam admits that despite severe torture, she never opened her mouth, so she'd a tough one. He sets down his glass, saying she wasn't always like that, so it must have been because of something in the past. He reveals that Chelsea's mother was a commoner, and when he was young, he went hunting with the knights and happened to meet her. Soon after, she became pregnant with Chelsea, and at first he denied it was possible from a single mistake, and he later found it distasteful that a mere commoner carried his blood, so he drove the two of them away when they came to meet him. Time passed and he suddenly became curious about the child he had abandoned, so he had someone investigate, found out the mother had died from the plague, and the child had survived alone, so he brought her to the duchy. Looking back, he admits that was unlike him, and wonders why he did it. Damien says it might be because she was family, so Adam admits that might be what she wanted. To truly become family. Maybe in order to gain his approval, she felt the need to go that far. He wearily says she could have lived a normal noblewoman's life and realizes he must be drunk since he's rambling like this. He apologizes for that, but S. Butler hurriedly rushes in, looking for him. Adam asks what the commotion is for, so he reveals that something terrible happened. Lady Chelsea hanged herself. As Damien and Victor are walking with their laundry, Victor asks if he's really going to do this and reminds him that he's said several times he should sort out his laundry when he takes his clothes off. He asks Damien if he doesn't even spare a thought for the person cleaning up since his socks are always inside out. Damien notices Adam standing alone and remarks that it's been several days since the death of Chelsea Gold Pixie. Officially, her death was concluded as a suicide, and the interrogation of those involved with her also came to an end. Her crime, putting the family in danger, was deemed unfit for a noble's burial, and she was buried in an unmarked grave. Thus, the threat looming over the Gold Pixie's duchy seemed to have been resolved for the time being, but Damien remarks that this is not the end, since it's possibly those guys he knows. Victor asks Damien he's even listening to him, so he cheerily tells him to stop nagging already, but Victor asks if he looks like he's nagging right now. A drunk Ernst wearily falls down and remembers Chelsea. In a flashback, a young Chelsea asks if her father would be pleased if she offered him the crown, so he admitted he wasn't sure since he'd never been given flowers before. She cheerily said her mother says flowers hold the power to make people happy. Besides, these were the flowers that were blooming in the field when mother and father first met, so she believes he will definitely be happy too, and Ernst cheerily agreed. Presently, he apologizes to her for not being able to protect her and starts crying, angrily saying he should have died right there and protected her. Rebecca sees that he's here, so he instantly slams her into the wall and asks how she dared to do this since the Grand Duchess is dead because of her. She hurriedly asks him to hear her out, but he orders her to shut up and calls her a filthy dark mage who conspired with the devil. She desperately asks him to help her take revenge, and slowly explains that the truth behind Lady Chelsea's death isn't what they think, and the duchy said it was suicide, but that's not true since she died. Unable to endure the pain, Ernst lets her go and asks what proof she has to say such a thing, so she wearily asks him to think about it, and asks if Lady Chelsea would really have had the strength to end her own life, and says he should know she wasn't that weak. More than anything, she reveals that she heard it from those who handled the body since there were signs of torture so severe, no ordinary person could have endured them, and they were found all over her body. She says injuries that severe definitely lead to death and declares that the Duke has faked Chelsea's suicide to cover up his own crime. Ernst agrees but remarks that that might be wrong since the Duke he knows is someone who cares about others. Rebecca says it's true that she intentionally approached the young lady, but she always treated her warmly, like her own sister. She says she can't just let this go and will take revenge on the Duke who did that to the young lady, and to do that, she tells Ernst she needs his help and uses a lure scent to control him. Bewitched, Ernst asks what he should do, and a while later as he walks away, Mustang says it fortunately succeeded since he was worried that the allure scent wouldn't work because he's middle class. Rebecca says no matter how strong someone is, they all have a weakness deep inside, and once that weakness forms in their heart, the magic can take hold more easily. Mustang says in Ernst's case, Chelsea Gold Pixie was his weakness, and Rebecca laughingly says they should be vague about it since they don't even know really killed her. If they fabricate it and say it was murder, people will go wild. She asks Mustang if they really have to go against Damien Haksen since he's totally out of their league, so Mustang asks if she's saying they should just sit back and do nothing. He asks if the Order's procedures confirm that he killed the young lady, and reminds her that on top of that, he interfered with the mission entrusted to them by him, which is utterly unforgivable. He says Damien Haksen still doesn't know who they really are, and the Duke's household must also be letting their guard down, thinking they've disappeared, so they will use this opportunity to kill him no matter what. Thank you for watching. Do you like this manga so far? We'll be back for another part very soon. Please like and subscribe to JockJut Manhwa for more amazing videos.